Causes of poverty in Africa. There are 6 primary aspects of causes of poverty in Africa. Those are the lack of access to affordable and efficient energy, recurring infectious diseases and the shortage of medical staff, political conflicts, conflicts of interest between local communities and foreign investors, among other things, the instability of the food market, and low workforce productivity. These are some causes of poverty in Africa. I will discuss it in detail. Poverty in Africa caused by corruption. Poverty in Africa is caused by corruption. A corrupt government sends corrupt leaders to corrupt schools, and the corrupted leaders get corrupted students who all become corrupted and come up with corruption solutions like socialism, which causes poverty and crime. Poverty in Africa caused by lack of good jobs. Poverty has several causes. Lack of good jobs is a major one. Poor countries like Africa can't compete in the way wealthier ones do, so their products aren't sold in rich countries. And the lack of trade means they can produce and export only a small number of goods, so they have no choice but to rely on a few industries or crops for their exports. This means many African farmers live in poverty and make a living from subsistence agriculture. Nearly 1 billion people live in extreme poverty in Africa, and for every 2 African people that escape poverty, 3 others still live in it. This is due to a lack of good jobs or economic opportunities available on the continent. Although many find work in the informal economy, this growing class of workers takes a significant cut from their revenues because of poor access to markets and credit and the high cost of living. Causes of poverty in Africa. Poverty in Africa caused by weather/climate change. Over 1 billion Africans, or 2/3 of the population, live below $2 a day. This amounts to over 730 million people living on less than $1 and over 250 million people exclusively making under 50 cents per day. In 2010, over 25% of homes had no access to electricity, and over 75% did not have paved roads nearby. Overall, the majority of African regions live in poverty due to poor climate and weather change affecting their economy and way of life. Poverty in Africa caused by social injustice. Poverty in Africa stems from both social injustice and geographic limitations. Poverty in Africa is a multifaceted problem that requires a multifaceted solution. Persistent poverty can cause political unrest, however, alleviating poverty will not remove the underlying causes of conflict. To end political instability, Africa must be ready for democracy because democracy allows individuals to have better lives. Poverty in Africa is caused by social injustices such as gender inequality, economic, and climate change. Overcoming these 3 problems will allow for countries in Africa to become key players in the global economy and environmental protection. Poverty in Africa caused by lack of food and water. Africa remains the world's only region with a growing population. The UN estimates that 34% of Africans are living in poverty, and this figure is rising. This topic is about the poverty in Africa caused by a lack of food and water, which means poor education, poor health, lack of income and few employment opportunities. Massive overpopulation, corruption, the high cost of food and famine-affected areas, war, drought, and natural disasters, lack of technology and infrastructure, etc. Poverty in Africa caused by lack of government support. Poverty in Africa is an extreme case of deprivation. This is caused by 2 major problems: the lack of government support and infatuation with HIV/AIDS. The poverty levels are usually measured by taking basic living standards into consideration, including health, education, and income level, as well as the UN's Human Attitudinal Index, HDI. The causes of poverty in Africa are multifaceted, and thus there are multiple solutions to end this. The existing systems are capable enough to reduce poverty at a rapid speed if the world agrees to act together on all fronts. The problem of poverty in Africa is bad. Currently, one of the most common poverty causes is a lack of support from the government. These poor countries cannot get enough money to provide healthcare, education, and other vital services to their people. Poverty in Africa caused by inequality. Poverty in Africa has been a serious problem for the continent and its poor people, who have suffered from inequality caused by external factors. Huge disparities exist in sub-Saharan Africa between rich and poor, and most of these inequalities originate with the land. A look at the poverty in Africa caused by inequality provides us with a background to find solutions to break this cycle of poverty, disintegration, and instability. As with all development reports, there are always two sides to every coin. This report will focus on one side of the coin, which is the poverty that is caused by inequality. The other side of the coin will be presented in another chapter dedicated to discussing solutions for change, alternatives for lasting and positive change, and actions that individuals can take to help bring about a positive change on the African continent. Poverty in Africa caused by lack of education. According to UNESCO, more than 50% of children in Indiana, Africa aged 6 to 11 are out of school. In some countries such as Nigeria, only less than 14% of the population have had any formal education, and in Swaziland, there is no basic education past the age of 16. Due to poverty, many African children get out of school at the age of 10 or earlier to contribute to their families through work. Poverty in Africa is mainly caused by the lack of education. With a lack of education, children cannot get jobs to support their families, who then may become too poor to buy food, creating a vicious cycle. Sometimes poverty can be caused by other factors, lack of food, water access, or diseases, for example, but most of it is caused by a lack of education. Education is the road out of poverty.